Hello again. Today we will be talking about superego types. I just remind you about all these energies and archetypes we associate them with. So we started with energy id and id types and associate them with the archetype child. They have got childish nature in them, maybe a bit more prominent than in others. And it doesn't mean that they look childish, all of them, not quite, but maybe in their outfits they might stand out of the crowd somehow, with just looking different, maybe looking a little bit like characters from cartoons or something, just to be noticeable and bringing this positive vibe of enjoying life. Then we had superego types, which we associate with the archetype shadow, with a skeleton in a closet, dark side. Ego types associated with the archetype hero, strong leaders, controlling. And now we're coming to superego types. Energy superego. As I told you previously, energy superego in the theory of Sigmund Freud was developed after id and ego, and incorporates two parts in itself: ego ideal and ego conscience. So ego ideal, rewarding the person for good behavior, and ego conscience punishes the person with a feeling of guilt. Superego energy is associated with the archetype old man. Originally, I didn't really think that much about associating all of the energy types with archetypes. For me, what's important was description of superid, of shadow. But then later on, yes, when I learned about it, I thought, yes, it's possible. Superego energy is responsible for teaching people right and wrong. And old man is like a person who give you counsel, who give you advice, or the person who shares experience, life experience, teaching. And of course, such establishments like school, nurseries, and so on, educational establishments, they teach the person to live in a society, to progress and, be successful. Societal norms. So it is a rational energy. We're talking about rational types. These are people who likes stability in life, who are driven by the judgment, by the way they understand the world, while irrational types are interested in unknown, in different, something which is different from what we can understand and from the norms as well, whether it be societal norm or any other. So usually we associate with rationality planning, but it doesn't has to be strict planning. Yes, sometimes maybe plan a bit more, sometimes a bit less. But generally, all rational types have to have an idea of what they're doing, and they feel comfortable when they go by their plan. They can manipulate a bit and change a bit. But what they don't like when something happens which is not planned, and put a demand on their time and so on, because they already plan something else. So not that flexible as irrational types. So these superego types are rational, they're introverted, they are more reserved, more drawn into their world, and static. So they easier for them to see the world as a set of pictures, because it's important for them to understand it first before they react or jump to any conclusions. It may take time for them to metabolize information. And the static preference we see most of the time in the pictures they choose, or in music they like, where the rhythm is sort of repetitive, not chaotic, and not changing very abruptly. Let's say that. Yes, so superego types carrying in them and expressing this kind of energy more than any other types. And other types who has got this energy as a second energy, that would be it types. They also static types. And they have two functions, two values. As superego types, these are logic, structural, introverted logic, which has got a symbol of white square. We call it white logic as well. And the second function is ethics of relationships, introverted ethics, which has got a symbol of the letter L, white letter L, white ethics. As I said, it types, they also have got this function, but not as strong as in superego types. And for superego types, these two functions are crucial. They are the only ones which, between among 8 functions, which are static, rational, and introverted. These functions, they hold the personality like in borders, and the person cannot get out of these borders. This is a main function, main values. The other two pair which supports, complements these functions will be the functions typical for it types. It is extroverted, irrational, static functions, intuition of possibilities, NE, and sensory of power, we call it SE. That is the name of the functions. Introverted ethics, we call it FI, and introverted logic, TI, like in Myers-Briggs typology. So between these four types, two logical and two ethical superego types, there will be some similarities and some differences. If we start from the main two functions, logics and ethics, we can say that introverted logic, these types, they are more into thinking, more objectively thinking, and they rely on their logic more than anything in their explanation of what's happening and in judging other people. No, just for example, if the small child behaves badly, so the simple explanation would be the child has eaten chocolates, something which produced them to behave that way. While ethical types have got more shades and more understanding of why the child might be not feeling well or not wanting to sleep, and so on. So that is the difference in more objective logical thinking and more subjective ethical thinking. Logical types also much more stubborn in their judgment and in their conclusion, because they made like this to rely on this instrument of logic. Ethical types are different because they understand people more deeply and they see much more. And there are situations where they think there is no point to argue. The person just sees bushes and doesn't see the forest behind the bushes. And that's why they are more flexible in the way they approach other people and deal with other people, because they feel the other people a bit more better understand the motivation, why people behave that way, why they say this way. So that's why they are more conforming types. They don't mind, for the sake of the peace, for the sake of keeping good relationship, not to say what they think, not to say what they feel. They might say that the person doesn't understand anyway. And sometimes what is possible, that they accept the guilt, although they're not guilty. So it's just to smooth situation. They try to avoid sharp corners. If we talk about the difference between ethical types, we got two pairs, Dostoevsky and Dreiser, and then we have got two logical types. They differ between themselves on sensory of power and intuition of possibilities. And now we look from this point of view, that two types, logical sensory Maxim Gorky and ethical sensory Dreiser, we call it, they are more practical. This they have got in common, the sensory. They're practical, they're more hands-on, weaker intuition, and that's why they understand better the choices, the right choices for themselves through practice. Like, it's not really point to ask them, oh, can you do this or can you do that or whatever. Most of the times they need to try it on to do something, and then they will tell you how they feel about it. Is it good or not good? And it doesn't matter in this case either logical or ethical. They both sensory. They don't have strong intuition. They might have got the same fears as well. Also, the fears of ethical type, sensory type, dreiser, can be less objective because dreiser has got vulnerable intuition of possibilities to the extent that he might see negative things happening just absolutely weird, let's say that. You know, like they can afraid of anything that may happen, almost like the brick can fall on your head. Why not? Anything may happen, and that makes them, of course, very worried and so on. Of course, logical sensory type, Maxim Gorky, will be a bit more objective in a sense he is judging the situation. So, and if you look into intuitive superego types, which is Dostoevsky, ethical, intuitive, and logical, we have got Robespierre. So they have got something in common. Although they differ by logic and ethics, they have got in common intuition. And intuition makes them maybe a bit more creative, easier to find the way how to do things. They are not lost in the shop where they go to buy something, for example, yeah. They're not afraid of all these choices there. They kind of, it's easier for them. They don't need to try everything to understand what exactly they want, yeah. So that's intuition of possibility. It is finding the right way out, finding the right choice, finding the key to this situation, to solve it. Yeah, problem solving skills as well, which sensory type don't have. So now we talk a little bit in general, and maybe I'll tell a few words about all of these types as well. Okay, we will start with logical types. I already started to talk about logical sensory type, Maxim Gorky. It is a practical type. They are good with their resources. They are economical. They strive for success in life. That's why they work a lot. They don't mind to work to have the success. They want to have status. And they might go from one work to another. They might changing work as well until they find something they like. Many people of this type, they either work with documents, like bookkeeping, for example, or they work in a military, because logic, sensory logic, it is like managing power, objective judgment about the physical force. That gives some understanding of hierarchy, and that's why they are good for military service. So it doesn't matter man or woman, they can be in police or in military, find themselves as being successful. Next type is logical type, Robespierre. I didn't say that Maxim Gorky was a Russian writer at the beginning of 19th century, no, 19th, 20th century, 19 to 20. He wrote about hard life of people, of poor people in Russia. And Robespierre was a politician in France. What is interesting about Robespierre? We could the same call him not Robespierre, but for example, the Russian Tsar Paul the First. These people have got also, like Maxim Gorky type, they have got strong mind. They hold on to their understanding of things, on the principles, and they get very upset, irritated if the rules and norms of living are disrupted. So bad people are who disrupt the rules on the road or any other rules, but in no, basically behave badly, not keeping clean house, not looking after themselves. They're very much holding on to these societal norms and rules. They can be, how to say it, they can be very hard on other people. That is related to the vulnerable sensory of power. Vulnerable position of sensory of power, it's like feeling on a physical level, on a level of physical force, not being able to stand up for themselves, physically and so on. It doesn't mean that they don't get into fight. They get, but maybe they somehow feel their inferiority because it's not really strong function, physical force and power. And that's why they're very sensitive to disrespect. They might consider the other person is disrespectful where the person is not disrespectful. So Russian word would be like a despot. Pavel the First, Russian Tsar, when he died, people just celebrated on the roads everywhere. That's great. We have got rid of this person monster, because for any small misbehavior, he could not just toll over the person in a very rough manner, like expressive emotions and so on, but he can put him into prison, for example, harsh punishment, very harsh punishment, not getting into understanding of why this person might do that, to consider any excuses. No, very harsh minded people of this type. But what is the advantage? What the advantage of being this type? No, of course, lots of advantages, and one of them is problem-solving mind. Very smart, very clever people, understanding technology, programming. It depends where they want really to go to improve their mind. But business, they can find the solution. They know how to find the problem, existing problems. They try different ways, and then they solve problem. But they also caring, loving, so they have got this, very different nature. But aren't we all? Because if we consider our strongest values, superego types, I mean, introverted ethics and introverted logic, these values are different from, for example, irrational functions, extroverted intuition and extroverted sensory. And this becomes sometimes a conflict between themselves, because different functions want different things. So, and this is complex nature of personality. So the only type which I didn't tell you, it's my type. We call it Dreiser. It's American writer. Although writing skills, it's really hard. Really hard because of the sensory. It is ethical sensory type, which is people loving, understanding, and so on, but also sensory, creative sensory gives the strength to the character when the person wants to achieve something. You know, it goes with the power. Powerful people. But it might not make impression of powerful people until you really know them. Willpower in achieving the goals they want to do. All four types which we were talking about, they belong to different interest club. Yeah, for example, Dreiser is ethical sensory. We call it social types. For them, it is easier to care for people, maybe nursing, maybe teaching, tidy the house, everything to do with hands, you know, kind of work with hands would be easy for them. Creative work, like fantasy or something, imagination, hardly any. And I in particular don't even like it. Because I can be, okay, it might be my individuality a little bit shines through here as well. But I do like real world. What happens in real world? I usually watch documentaries, listen to the stories which has happened. And if I watch the film which was not based on true story, or some sort of other film, if the film I find very weird or very shaky, kind of emotionally and so on, I'm upset. I think, gosh, I wasted my time. That's the important thing, that the types with vulnerable intuition, they don't really waste their time. And if they need to do something, they can do it quickly. But if they interest in something, oh, they can put time into it. That's not a problem. Yes, so Dreiser is a social type, ethic sensory, working with people in a caring environment and so on. Then we have got logical sensory introvert Maxim Gorky. He belongs to manager clubs, good managers. Then we have got Dostoevsky, ethical intuitive introvert. He belongs to club of humanists, and humanists have got great ability to create something in words, you know, poetry, writing, stories. They can do it. If they haven't done it yet, they just didn't try it. If they try, they will see that they can do it very well. And logical intuitive type, Robespierre, belongs to club of the scientists. So they can work with information, abstract information, or any kind of logical information, and find, to problem solve, let's say that, or to create something new in the field of information. Okay, thank you very much. Today it's gonna be a bit longer, the video. Thank you for watching.